Ever feel like you just need that evening drink to unwind? Like it's the only way to hit the off switch at the end of the day.
You're definitely not alone.
Right. But what if I told you there are actually other ways to relax that don't involve a corkscrew or a hangover the next morning?
I like the way you think.
We're diving into 10 ways to relax without alcohol from Longbranch Recovery today.
Oh, good one.
Yeah, it's full of surprisingly practical advice for anyone, really.
Right, like even if you're not looking to cut back on alcohol entirely, you couldn't use a few more ways to unwind.
Exactly. And what I found fascinating is how the article acknowledges that it's not just about willpower, like just deciding to relax and poof, it happens.
No, I wish.
Right. But they actually dig into the science behind why alcohol is so ingrained in our relaxation routines, even if it's not actually doing what we think it is.
That's what's so fascinating, right? It's like we've been sold this idea of what relaxation looks like.
Yes. Like that whole wind down ritual so many people swear by. Turns out, alcohol can really mess with your sleep cycles, actually making you feel more drained the next day.
Which is the opposite of relaxing.
Totally.
Yeah,
I know I've definitely woken up after a night of supposedly unwinding, feeling anything but relaxed.
Oh, yeah. And it gets even deeper than that. Remember that feeling of anxiety just melting away after a drink or two?
Oh, yeah?
The article says that's kind of a trick.
Really?
Yeah, alcohol might temporarily numb those feelings, but over time, it can actually make anxiety worse, not better.
Okay, that's a bit of a buzzkill.
I know, right?
But also, it kind of makes sense. Like, if you're relying on a substance to manage your mood, that's not exactly a recipe for long-term emotional stability.
Exactly. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a bigger issue.
So true. In fact, I read somewhere that people who cut back on drinking often find they're better able to regulate their emotions overall without relying on that temporary crutch.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, they actually have a ton of data on this. People who cut back or quit often find they have a much better handle on their emotions. It's like they develop this inner resilience.
So it's not about deprivation. It's actually about gaining more control. That's a really empowering way to look at it.
Right. It's like taking back the reins.
So if we're ditching the booze, what are some of the alternatives the article suggests?
Well, one of the first things they dive into is exercise.
Okay.
And before you roll your eyes.
I was not going to roll my eyes.
I know. But a lot of people do. They hear exercise and they think, ugh, I don't want to go to the gym. I'm trying to relax here. But it's not about getting ripped or running a marathon,
Right. It's about moving your body.
Exactly. The article highlights how exercise causes your brain to release endorphins, those natural mood boosters.
Yeah.
And they have a completely different effect on your system than alcohol does.
So it's not just about feeling good because you worked up a sweat. It's about actively changing your brain chemistry to better handle stress.
You got it. It's like hitting the reset button in your brain, naturally.
I like it. That's pretty cool.
Right. And, the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, the ADA, they even point out that regular physical activity can lead to better sleep. So unlike that nightcap that can leave you tossing and turning, exercise can actually help you get a more restful night's sleep.
Which, let's be honest, makes a world of difference when it comes to feeling relaxed and recharged.
Tell me about it.
But what about those moments when you're hit with stress out of nowhere? You can't exactly go for a run in the middle of a tense meeting.
That's where the article's next suggestion comes in, and I'm curious to know if you've ever tried this: progressive muscle relaxation.
Progressive muscle relaxation.
Yeah, have you heard of it?
I'll be honest, I was skeptical at first. But I actually tried that whole forehead squeezing thing while I was prepping for this.
No way, really.
Yeah, and I was surprised by how much tension I was holding in my face. It was wild.
It's amazing how much tension we carry around without even realizing it.
Isn't it?
That's what's so cool about progressive muscle relaxation, though. You systematically tense and release different muscle groups in your body.
So you're bringing awareness to those tense spots.
Yes, and then you're actively choosing to let go. And it can be incredibly effective for breaking that cycle of stress.
And the best part is, the article provides a really clear guide. It even tells you how long to hold the tension and relaxation for each muscle group.
I love that they get into the nitty-gritty like that.
Me too. It makes it so much easier to actually do it. And they say it's particularly helpful in those moments when you'd normally reach for a drink to unwind. Which, speaking of, they also emphasize the importance of identifying your triggers.
Oh, huge. Awareness is key here. But, a trigger can be any situation, emotion, or even a person that makes you want to reach for a drink.
Okay, so let's say you always find yourself craving a glass of wine or a beer after a particularly stressful work meeting. That meeting itself becomes a trigger, right?
Exactly. You nailed it. And once you're aware of those patterns, you can start to develop healthier coping mechanisms. Which brings us to the next two tips in the article, which kind of go hand in hand: mindfulness and meditation.
I'll admit, I used to think mindfulness was a bit too, new agey for me.
Right.
But the way this article explains it makes it feel much more approachable.
Yeah, totally. It's not about chanting or sitting cross-legged on a mountaintop.
Unless you want it to be.
Exactly. But at its core, it's really about being present in the moment without judgment.
Yeah.
Instead of numbing out with a drink, mindfulness encourages you to acknowledge your emotions, whatever they are, and just let them be. Like, oh, hey there, anxiety, I see you.
Instead of trying to drown it out.
Exactly.
And the article even provides this simple but powerful tool for putting mindfulness into practice.
Right. Like it gives you an actual action you can take. It's so easy to remember. Stop, take a breath, observe, proceed.
Well, I like that. It's like a reset button for your brain.
And speaking of taking a moment to regroup, the article also suggests finding healthy distractions.
Healthy distractions.
Especially when those cravings hit,
Okay, yeah, like instead of reaching for a drink.
Exactly. And they emphasize that this isn't about ignoring your feelings, though. It's more about shifting your focus in a positive way,
So like redirecting that energy.
Yes. Exactly. Like they give some great examples like calling a supportive friend, listening to uplifting music, or getting lost in a good book, things like that.
Okay, yeah, so it's about intentionally choosing to engage with something that nourishes your mind and spirit instead of reaching for that temporary fix. And hey, if those options feel a little too low-key, the article also talks about the benefits of finding a fun hobby. So what kind of hobbies do they suggest?
Well, they're really open-ended about it, which I like, because it's really about finding what works for you. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, It could be joining a sports league, taking up gardening, trying a pottery class, or even just dusting off that old guitar in the corner. The key is to find something you genuinely enjoy that helps you unwind and de-stress.
It's so interesting how they connect having hobbies with better stress management.
Right. It's not just about keeping busy, is it? It's about having something to look forward to, something that brings you joy and helps you tap into your creativity.
Yes. I love that, tapping into your creativity. And you know what else they talk about? Social connection.
Oh, yes. Huge. I was going to bring that up.
It's so important, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to cut back on alcohol. Like those social situations where everyone else is drinking can be tough to navigate.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like you suddenly feel this pressure to explain yourself,
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. But having that solid support system can make all the difference.
It's true. The article talks about how connecting with others who understand your journey can provide a sense of belonging and accountability, which can be so crucial, especially in those early stages of change.
It's like having a team of cheerleaders in your corner, reminding you why you're making these changes and celebrating your wins along the way.
Yes, love that analogy. And that support can come from friends, family members, or even online communities. The important thing is to surround yourself with people who lift you up and encourage your growth.
And I think it's also important to remember that you have the power to create that environment for yourself. Like it's okay to distance yourself from people or situations that make it harder to stick to your goals. Setting boundaries is important.
Yes, 100%. You have the power to create an environment that supports your well-being.
So let's recap here. We've got exercise, mindfulness, hobbies, social support.
Yeah.
It's like building a whole arsenal of tools to combat stress and create a more fulfilling life without relying on alcohol. What else does the article suggest?
Well, they also touch on a few lifestyle factors that often get overlooked, like getting enough sleep, for example.
Sleep. We all know we should prioritize sleep. It's like that thing everyone tells you to do.
Right. Like drink more water, get 8 hours.
Exactly. But it's easier said than done sometimes.
Totally. And the article actually points out that alcohol can really disrupt our sleep patterns, even if it makes us feel drowsy at first.
It's like that quick fix that backfires later.
Exactly. So cutting back on the booze can actually lead to more restful sleep in the long run.
Okay, so better sleep long term, even if you feel like you're missing out initially. Makes sense.
Which, in turn, helps with stress management. It's like this positive feedback loop.
Right, because when you're well rested, you can handle stress better. So what else did the article mention?
Well, they also touched on the impact of caffeine, which can be another one of those things that we don't always think about.
Right, because that morning coffee can be like lifeblood.
Right. Like, I need my coffee to function. But too much caffeine can actually leave you feeling wired and edgy.
Yeah, that buzzy feeling isn't always a good thing.
Not always. It can actually increase your stress levels, and like alcohol, it can interfere with sleep if you're consuming it too close to bedtime.
Ah, the double whammy. Okay, so being mindful of caffeine intake, especially later in the day.
Exactly. It's about paying attention to how different substances make you feel, both physically and mentally. Like, what are you putting into your body, and how is it impacting your overall well-being?
Okay, so we were talking about exercise, mindfulness, hobbies, social support, better sleep, managing caffeine. Is there anything else?
They talk about stretching.
Stretching.
It's amazing how much of a difference even a few minutes of stretching can make, especially when you're feeling stressed.
Like, how does that work? I get that it's good for flexibility and all, but how does stretching help with relaxation specifically?
Well, when you think about it, it's the complete opposite of what alcohol does to your body. Like, alcohol can actually tense you up over time, while stretching helps you physically release that tension.
Ooh, I like that perspective. So it's like instead of numbing the tension with a drink,
Yeah.
you're actually addressing it head on.
Exactly. And they're not just talking about touching your toes here. The article actually recommends incorporating stretching into your daily routine. Even if it's just for a few minutes at a time, it can improve flexibility, reduce stress, and even improve your posture.
So it's like giving yourself a mini massage throughout the day.
Exactly.
So we've got a whole toolkit here. Exercise, mindfulness, hobbies, social support, better sleep, managing caffeine, even just taking a few moments to stretch. It's kind of empowering when you realize how many options there are.
Right. It's not about just toughing it out or forcing yourself to relax. It's about having all these different tools at your disposal. All of these tips that we've been talking about, they're not just for people who want to cut back on alcohol. They can benefit anyone, really.
Totally. It's about embracing a more holistic approach to well-being.
Exactly. And recognizing that all of these aspects of ourselves, our bodies, our minds, our spirits, they're all interconnected.
To everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into relaxation without alcohol. Remember, there are countless ways to unwind and live a full and meaningful life. We'll see you next time.
If you or a loved one are struggling with substance use, we can help. Call Longbranch Recovery at 504-474-7927 or visit longbranchrecovery.com to learn more about our specialized addiction treatment programs. Start your path to recovery at Longbranch.